Why does everyone feel behind in life? At some point, almost everyone gets the same strange feeling. You open your phone for 2 minutes. Someone from school just bought a house. Someone younger than you just started a business. Someone your age is getting married. Someone else is traveling the world. Someone has abs, savings, a baby, a podcast, a dog, a clean apartment, a perfect morning routine, and somehow also time to read books. And suddenly, nothing actually happened to you, but you feel late. Not sad exactly, and not jealous exactly. More like you missed a train you don't remember buying a ticket for. And the weirdest part is this: there is no official race. No one handed you a schedule at birth that said, by 22, know who you are. By 25, have a career. By 28, be financially stable. By 30, have your body, your relationship, your purpose, your personality, and your kitchen cabinets figured out. Nobody signed that contract, and yet millions of people walk around with the quiet feeling that they are somehow behind. Behind who? Behind what? And why does life feel like a deadline, even when nobody can tell you what the deadline is? That is the weird reason we are looking at today, because maybe the problem is not that you are failing at life. Maybe the problem is that your brain is trying to compare your real life to an imaginary timeline that was never real in the first place. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Most of us don't just want a good life. We want a life that makes sense at the right time. It's not enough to succeed. We want to succeed early. It's not enough to find love. We want to find love before people start asking questions. It's not enough to change direction. We want to change direction before it looks like we wasted time. This is why being behind feels so painful. It is not only about what you don't have, it is about the fear that you should have had it already. And that word already does a lot of damage, because already suggests that there was a correct timeline, a normal order, a hidden schedule that everyone else somehow received. You should already be confident. You should already know your purpose. You should already have more money. You should already be over that thing. You should already be further along. But where did this schedule come from? Partly it came from the old life script. For a long time, life was presented as a sequence. You go to school, you choose a path. You get a job, you find a partner, you buy a home, you have children, you build stability. You slowly become the person you were supposed to be. It sounds simple, almost comforting, but it was never as universal as people pretend. Even in the past, plenty of people did not follow that path. They just had fewer places to publicly display the alternative. Today, the script is still in our heads, but the world around it has changed. Careers are less linear. Relationships start later, end differently, or don't follow traditional rules at all. People move cities, change industries, go back to school, burn out, start over, reinvent themselves, disappear for a while, come back as a completely different version of themselves. But the emotional expectation did not update as fast as reality did. So we live in a modern world with an old calendar in our heads, and when life does not match that calendar, we don't always think, maybe the calendar's outdated. We think, something is wrong with me. That is the first trap. The second trap is comparison. Humans have always compared themselves to other humans. That part is not new. If you lived in a small village hundreds of years ago, you probably compared yourself to your neighbor, your cousin, the person who had more land, the person who got married first, the person whose bread looked better, whatever people were insecure about back then. But there was a limit. You could only compare yourself to the people you actually knew. Now, you compare yourself to everyone. Not literally everyone, but emotionally it feels like everyone. You see the richest person from your school, the most attractive person from your gym, the most productive person from YouTube, the funniest person from TikTok, the calmest person from Instagram, the most successful 22-year-old founder, the couple with the beautiful apartment, the stranger who somehow made your dream life look casual, and your brain does something incredibly unfair. It takes the best visible part of thousands of different people and combines them into one imaginary person. Then it asks, why are you not like them? But that person does not exist. No single human has the career of one person, the body of another, the relationship of another, the creativity of another, the discipline of another, the money of another, and the happiness of another. You are not comparing yourself to a person. You're comparing yourself to a collage, a monster made of other people's highlights. And because the internet makes this monster look normal, your own life starts to look strangely small. You wake up tired, you forget to answer messages, and you eat something random over the sink. You waste time, you feel unsure. You have a good day, then a bad week. You make progress, then fall back. You don't know what you're doing, and then you open your phone and see someone announcing, big news. And somehow, their big news makes your quiet Tuesday feel like evidence of failure. But here's the trick. Visibility is not normality. The thing you see most often is not necessarily the thing that happens most often. It is just the thing that gets posted, rewarded, shared, and repeated. Nobody goes viral for quietly surviving a difficult year. Nobody gets thousands of likes for not giving up on a normal Wednesday. Nobody makes a dramatic announcement like, after years of confusion, I'm slowly becoming a little less lost. But for many people, that is the real story. Not a grand transformation, not a cinematic breakthrough, just slow, private progress that does not look impressive from the outside. And because it is private, it becomes invisible. So the internet fills your mind with visible achievements and hides the invisible struggle, which creates a very strange illusion. Everyone is moving faster than you, but you're not seeing everyone. You are seeing people at the exact moment they have something to show. That is not the same thing. There is another reason life feels like a race. We treat age like a scoreboard. A 19-year-old who succeeds is a genius. A 25-year-old who succeeds is inspiring. A 35-year-old who succeeds is finally figuring it out. A 50-year-old who starts again is proof it's never too late. Notice how the same action changes meaning depending on age. Start a business at 21 and people call you a prodigy. Start one at 42 and people call you brave. Fall in love at 23 and it seems normal. Fall in love at 45 and people treat it like a life lesson. Move back in with your parents at 18 and it is expected. Move back in at 31 and suddenly you feel like a failed adult, even if there are completely reasonable reasons for it. We attach stories to ages. And then we suffer when our actual lives do not match the story. But age is a terrible measure of progress. Because people do not start from the same place. Some people grow up with emotional stability. Some grow up learning how to survive. Some people are encouraged early. Some people spend years recovering from being discouraged. Some people have money, contacts, health, safety, confidence, or support. Others have to build the basic ability to believe they deserve a life. And then we pretend everyone is running the same race. That is like watching two people climb a mountain and only comparing their height, while ignoring that one started halfway up and the other started in a hole. Of course, they look different from the outside, but the outside is not the full story. This is why behind is such a cruel feeling. It ignores context. It reduces your whole life to a visible result. It does not care what you had to carry. It does not care what you had to unlearn. It does not care what you survived quietly. It does not care how much energy it took just to stay functional. It only asks, why aren't you there yet? And because the question sounds simple, you assume the answer must be simple too. Maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I'm not disciplined. Maybe I wasted too much time. Maybe I chose wrong. Maybe I'm just not the kind of person who gets there. But sometimes you are not behind. Sometimes you are just tired. Sometimes you are not late. Sometimes you are rebuilding. Sometimes you are not failing. Sometimes you are developing in a direction that does not look impressive yet. And sometimes the thing you call falling behind is actually your life refusing to follow a script that was never designed for you. There's also a quieter reason people feel behind. We rarely compare ourselves to the whole life of another person. We compare ourselves to the part that hurts us most. If you are single, you notice couples. If you are broke, you notice money. If your career feels uncertain, you notice promotions. If you feel unattractive, you notice bodies. If you feel lonely, you notice friend groups. If you feel ordinary, you notice exceptional people. Your insecurity becomes a search engine. It scans the world for proof. And because the world is huge, it will always find some. This is not because you are weak. It is because your brain is trying to protect you. It thinks comparison is useful. It thinks if it keeps showing you where you are lacking, you will fix the problem and become safe. So it says, look, they are ahead. Look, you are falling behind. Look, you need to hurry. But shame is not a very good life coach. It can create movement, yes, but it usually creates desperate movement. You start chasing things not because you want them, but because you are terrified of what it means if you don't have them. A relationship becomes proof you are lovable. A job title becomes proof you are not a disappointment. A body becomes proof you have control. A bank account becomes proof you are safe. A busy schedule becomes proof you are important. And now the goal is not really the goal. The goal becomes emotional evidence. Evidence that you are okay. Evidence that you are not behind. Evidence that no one can look at your life and say, what happened? That is a hard way to live. Because even when you get the thing, the relief does not always last. You get the job, and then someone has a better one. You get the apartment, and then someone buys a house. You get in shape, and then someone looks better. You reach one milestone, and the timeline immediately invents another. The finish line moves because it was never real. It was just anxiety wearing a calendar. So, what do you do with this feeling? Not in a fake inspirational way, not just stop comparing yourself, because that advice barely works. Comparison is automatic. It happens before you can politely ask your brain to stop. The better question is, what is this comparison trying to tell me? Sometimes it tells you about a real desire. You see someone traveling and realize you want more freedom. You see someone building a skill and realize you miss learning. You see someone in a calm relationship and realize you want emotional safety. You see someone creating something and realize you have been ignoring your own ideas. That kind of comparison can be useful. Painful, but useful. But sometimes comparison does not reveal desire. It reveals fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of wasting your life. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of choosing wrong. Fear that if you are not impressive, you are not valuable. And that kind of comparison does not need to be obeyed. It needs to be questioned. Because maybe you don't actually want their life. Maybe you only want their certainty. Maybe you don't want their job. You want to stop feeling lost. Maybe you don't want their relationship. You want to stop wondering if you are hard to love. Maybe you don't want their money. You want to stop feeling one disaster away from panic. Maybe you don't want to be ahead. Maybe you just want to feel safe where you are. That is a very different problem, and it requires a very different solution. Because if the real need is safety, then achievements alone will never fully solve it. You can collect milestones and still feel late. You can look successful and still feel like you are secretly catching up. You can be admired by people who have no idea you are comparing yourself to someone else. This is one of the strangest parts of being human. You might be someone else's reason for feeling behind. Right now, there may be someone looking at one part of your life and thinking, why can't I be more like them? And you would probably laugh because you know the full story. You know the mess. You know the insecurity. You know the things you still don't have figured out. You know the version of yourself that does not fit the image. And that is the point. Everyone is comparing their inside to someone else's outside. Everyone is reading their own life in draft form, while seeing other people's lives as finished products. But nobody's finished. Some people are just better lit. So maybe the question is not, am I behind? Maybe the better question is, behind which version of life? The one my parents expected? The one my school implied? The one my culture rewards? The one social media keeps showing me? The one I invented when I was younger and did not know what life would actually cost? Because you can be behind an imaginary timeline and still be exactly inside your real life. You can be late to a fantasy and still on time for something true. And no, that does not mean you should stop trying. It does not mean goals are bad. It does not mean ambition is toxic. It does not mean you should lie to yourself and pretend everything is fine if you want change. It means you should be careful who gets to define behind. Because if you let the internet define it, you will always be late. If you let fear define it, you will always be lacking. If you let other people's milestones define it, your own life will always look like a problem to solve. But if you define it honestly, something changes. You might realize you are not behind. You are just in a chapter that does not look impressive from the outside. You are learning things that do not have a public announcement. You are building stability no one claps for. You are becoming someone slowly. And slowly is not the same as failing. Maybe the weird reason everyone feels behind in life is that we were taught to imagine life as a race, then handed a phone that shows us only the winners, then told to build a meaningful life while constantly checking the scoreboard. No wonder we feel late. But life is not a race just because anxiety brought a stopwatch. There are things you will understand late. There are things you will start again. There are versions of you that need time. There are years that look wasted but later become the reason you understand yourself. And maybe one day you will look back at this exact period, the confusing one, the slow one, the one where you thought you were behind, and realize something was happening. Not loudly, not beautifully, not in a way anyone could post, but it was happening. You were not missing your life, you were inside it. And that is the part comparison can never show you.